Yeah, hello everyone. I am Randhir Kumar, Senior Consultant and SME for Wireless in Koenig Solution Private Limited, New Delhi, India. Today we are going to discuss about configuring the WLAN to support guest access, in which we will discuss about how we can configure guest access services over the wireless LAN controller as well as access point. So in terms to design or to configure, so this is the first diagram in front of us that we are looking right now, is representing that we have one router here. So we have one router here and we have a firewall. Another, we have Ethernet over IP tunnel. So we have two controllers, first of all, that we need to discuss. One is anchor controller and one is foreign controller. Both are connected to these switches. So the foreign controller is the landing controller, where all the traffic is directly landing from all the access point spread out in the enterprise campus for the everyone, whether it's my enterprise user or it's the guest user. So all over the campus of the company environment is completely access point is spread out, or the access point is situated everywhere. Anyone who likes to connect with any one access point or any one SSID, all the traffic will directly lands on the foreign controller. Then this foreign controller is connected to this switch one, which I'm highlighting in the red now. And further, this switches is configuring through the firewall, where all the traffic is connected and moving towards the ISP, which is leading to the router to the internet. And we have one more another controller, which is anchor controller, which is in the DMZ zone behind the firewall. So we have source and destination controller IP address. Then we have UDP 1666 for inter-WLC communication. We have IP protocol ID 97, which is used for Ethernet over IP tunnel. Then we have UDP 161 and 162 for SNMP. Then we have UDP 69 for TFTP server. Then we have TCP 443 for HTTPS or GUI access. And we have a TCP 22 SSH for secured cell connections for the CLI access. So these are the protocol number and port number which should be configured on the firewall according to the access you need, according to the permissions that required from the people who are taking these services from the remote places as a VPN. So these are the some configurations values. These are the some port number which is really mandatory to take care of, and it should remember what is needed and what is open or closed on the firewall portion. Then we have DSCP and routing information in another slide. So this diagram is representing about the access point, switches, controller, and another controller in the DMZ zone. So this diagram is representing that this access point is here. Let's suppose this is my access point, this is another foreign controller. So we have IP address 10.203.1.1110 gateway, we have 10.203.1.2 DNS. So this particular IP address is coming from DSCP server, and DSCP server is located somewhere on anchor controller, where it is highlighting over here. So this is my anchor controller, you can understand. And this is the DNS server, which is also behaving as a can be your DSCP. So your controller can be also act as a DSCP, and your dedicated Microsoft or any Linux, any platform can be behave as a DHCP and DNS server. So the first access point to connect to the SSID, which is broadcasting by this access point, and this access point is managed, which is because it is a lightweight access point, so it is managed by the foreign controller as of now. And this foreign controller, according to the type of traffic it is, so if it is an enterprise traffic connecting on this SSID, so let's suppose I have one SSID, let's suppose I have one SSID, let's take an example. I have SSID, so I have two SSID here. So I have employee SSID and I have a guest SSID. So if anyone coming from employee SSID, this request will be forwarded to this AP, and this AP will forward it to this foreign controller. And this foreign controller itself process this entire resolution of or entire mapping of employee DHCP, DNS, and radius server, Active Directory, whatever it requires. This foreign controller is responsible to manage this traffic, because this is employee traffic. It's our own company employee, so that everything is configured. Whatever the client is trying to connect with the SSID or trying to connect with the Wi-Fi network. In the same position, if anyone, any guest user trying to connect this SSID, so this is two SSID I have here, employee SSID and guest SSID. This guest SSID is also landing on the same AP, and the same AP is corresponding informing the same controller, but the difference is that this controller is not going to manage the traffic. This controller will forward the traffic to the anchor controller. So it means what? This employee SSID, somewhere it is mapped with your anchor WLC. Who is your anchor WLC? So in this foreign WLC, we need to map this anchor WLC, that who is your anchor WLC. So all the traffic landing on the guest SSID here will be forwarded to the anchor WLC. But in between, there is a firewall who will check the traffic and check the rule of access list, what is configured, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So this is depending upon the different company policies, what is you supposed to allow them as a guest traffic, as a guest network. So that is overall idea about anchor and foreign traffic movement from either client to AP, AP to controller, and controller to another controller in case of anchor and in case of employee. So this is really, we need to understand what an employee do and what anchor do whenever any traffic is moving on the controller. Then we have anchor controller redundancy, which is similarly more important. So if our primary controller goes down, so that really we need to understand that if our primary controller goes down, then we need to understand who will be my secondary controller or the primary controller. So anchor controller redundancy, so we could have more than one controller as an anchor controller. So if my primary anchor controller goes fail, then we will have another anchor controller which will take responsibility of my communication. So this request will goes to the anchor controller, and if in any point of time, if this anchor controller goes down, this traffic will be forwarding to this redundant anchor controller, which will respond for the all guest traffic which is moving from. So let's suppose you have an access point here and you have a guest network here. So this AP, all the traffic is coming on this AP, and it is primarily communicating with the anchor controller 1, but we have another anchor controller 2 here, which we will take responsibility in case of anchor controller 1 fails. So this is really very important to understand in case of anchor redundancy. So we would have WLC redundancy and we could have anchor WLC. So make sure you understand enough. WLC redundancy, I'm talking about the number of controller I have in my network, and that all controller redundancy I'm talking about. Anchor controller is only in case of guest architecture I'm talking about. Then we have bay portal authentications, like if anyone, like if any guest is trying to access on my SSID, that SSID will not give directly to the internet login page. They will route to the company homepage, and then it will move and give you, ask for user ID password. And that user ID password, if it is provided, it will allow and ask you for several read policies, the conditions for the company as a user, as a guest user. Once you will accept, you will give the credential, you are allowed on the internet. So user direction is really very important. So whenever you are redirected to any user or any DNS page, that is your choice. So if anyone accessing the internet given the user ID password, so what you do, you have first log in to the network. So let's suppose your SSID is connect. So you have connected to the SSID called guest, and when you connect it to the guest, it will give you a login for user ID and password. So let's suppose you have a X user and you have a Y password. So this is X user and Y password. Then it is a redirection login. Redirection login means whenever your user and password is accepted, then you will redirect it to the company web page. That is more important to understand. And accordingly, we can configure on the network which company web page, the first login page you want to see whenever any guest network connects, whether it's a company page or any customized informations that you would like to display, that can be also be part of this user redirection. Then we have guest credentials management, Cisco WSES. So this definitely, if I'm talking about Cisco WSES, means I'm talking about the Cisco Prime infrastructure, because Cisco WCS is the legacy standard of Cisco Prime infrastructure, which is running as of now as a 3.0 and above ports is running currently. So guest credentials management, centrally managed Cisco Prime. Lobby ambassador can manage guest user. Two guest templates can be used as template applied to any controller with a bay policies configured. So these are some small information that keep in mind that Prime can also this manage it. Local guest credentials management. Guest user created locally have a restricted capabilities. This username, generate password, administrator assign password, confirm password, lifetime, SSID checkbox. So this we have enough information that we can give on for the SSID. Local guest user authentication. So this is one flow chart that we understand here how that local guest user authenticated. So like client redirected to the local web server, then local database checked. If yes, client authenticated. If no, it will goes to WLAN radius. So we can understand by highlighting here. So if it checks, if done, if yes, authenticated. If no, it moves here, then it moves here and moves here, and finally your client authenticated at the same time. So this is how the process goes off. Guest access pass through. I can also provide some mail ID that you want. So we can also mention some mail ID that is mapped with some certain users, and that will be, that mail ID will have the redirections link that you need to accept and follow the steps that is required. Then you have a internet access at the same time. Then we have guest pass through. So external authentications. So when we are in progress to configuring your guest user, you need to mention which kind of web login page you are looking into. So you are looking into web authentication type redirection. So you can type here like cisco.com. After redirections, I want my this first web page login. Then you can also customize. So you can download from cisco.com and you can map here your downloadable page, whatever you like to page. There are different softwares, you can make it customize, and you can also upload according to it. So depends, like if you want a default design, you can go for default design. If you want for the certain design, you can go for the customizations that you want. Controller, you can configure web-auth proxy redirects mode, web-auth proxy redirect prot. So if you want to enable, you can enable it. A NAC guest server. So NAC was initially, currently NAC we do not have in Cisco, we do not have a dedicated NAC server as of now. But to talk, we have NAC guest server before, which is dedicatedly known for the NAC implementation. So NAC is basically related with your profiling, posturing, and all those radius and TOCAX implementation if you're looking for. So this is our implementation of wireless guest access that we have seen, and we have some small sort of slides here for Cisco NAC guest server. In case if you are needed those like profiling and posturings, then in that case only NAC is required, unless NAC is not required here. Implementing wireless guest access, like configuring mobility group, anchor controller, foreign controller, configuring interfaces on anchor controller, configuring WLAN for guest support, configuring lobby ambassador management account Cisco WS. So if you want to implement this wireless guest access, you really need to configure so many things before, like mobility group, anchor and foreign relationship, configuring SSID. So these are the some important basic configuration which is required to understand, and then you can achieve this guest access network portal or guest access Wi-Fi network. So in our next video, we will see how we can go in advance of configuring of wireless guest access, anchor foreign relationship, mobility group list. So there are really very basic and advanced configuration is exist on the guest access network, and that we will see in our next video. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you once again. And thank you.